There was a lot in there. You don't have to know it all. But I think that right now, if you were listening, you're up on a different plane than you were when you walked through the door. And I'm going to take what they said and I'm going to do some explaining on how they would go about this. First of all, she said, what we need is a debt for equity swap. She said the whole world needs a debt for equity swap. That's exactly right, because the same system, the same debt-based system, the same bank money system is operated all over the world. Don't believe me? Take a look at here. This is worldwide sovereign debt. And at the very top, right there, that's the United States, $19 trillion. Right underneath us, the United Kingdom at, I think it's 9.7 trillion. And go down this list of different countries here, and each one of them shows you how much debt they're in. But here's the deal, that's not all. Here's another 40. And that's not all. Here's another 40. And another 40. And another 40. You see, these countries are really not sovereign. The United States of America is really not sovereign, because if it was, then we wouldn't have a debt problem like this. These countries are they work inside a banking cartel, a worldwide banking cartel. These are different banking organizations like the Federal Reserve, like the ECB, like the Japanese Central Bank, but they are all interconnected into a network. And this network owns the money that all these countries use. And these countries, both the people and the national governments, have to borrow it in order to operate. Now this 19 trillion that you saw for our national debt, that's just a portion of our national debt. If you're thinking about what the total debt for the entire country is, because I'm just going to call it 20 trillion. 20 trillion is our government's national debt, but another 45 trillion is what we owe and what the American people owe. So that's a combined total of $65 trillion. And when I show you these numbers in here and show you how they vary with the two different systems, you're going to understand how even that can be paid off with a different system here. All right, this is the debt money system that she's talking about, that she's talking about, and that Bill Still is talking about. The bank money system. I call it, bank money is good. I don't use the state money term. I use sovereign money, because it's the people's money when the government is creating it. But let's go through this. Under the Federal Reserve System and all these central banking systems, the money is printed out of the air by the Federal Reserve member banks, and then it's loaned to the people. Then the people pay the loan back to the Fed member banks, and then the dollars go back into the air. So it's like, think about the water entering Lake Lanier. It comes from the air. It goes into Lake Lanier. If it sat there, eventually it would all go back into the air again, because it's all evaporating. That's why they call it currency, current. It's all related. Liquidity, it's all related to this same idea. So it's like ashes to ashes, dust to dust. If you loan a dollar into existence, then when you pay the dollar back off, it goes out of existence. That's the system we're operating under. The problem is, the banks don't print the money to pay the interest. So where are you going to get the money to pay the interest? All they do is print the principal. So what do you have to do? You have to borrow more principal. So down here, you'd have a duplicate set, just a little bit smaller numbers, say right in here, just to borrow more principal to pay the interest on the principal that you already borrowed. And then you just did it again, so you got to have another one down here, so you have a perpetual debt machine. And there's no way to pay it off, because they don't print enough money to pay it off. You're going to be astonished when you see the actual figures that I'm going to show you. So this is your debt-based economic model. Now this is very easy for me to explain how this works. See a credit card in your pocket? When you pay your bill tonight with a credit card, do you know that you're creating money? That money doesn't exist until you go and pay, until they take that credit card and they swipe it. All of a sudden, that money comes into existence, and it goes into their account, and then it leaves you with a liability. You've got to pay it back. But it didn't exist when you walked through the door. That's how the system works. So when you get your bill, and you're fortunate enough to be able to pay it at the end of the month, then all they did was they made you pay more for it by about 3%, because an establishment like this has to charge more for people who are going to use credit cards, because that 3% is taken out of their check. So this is how all of the money is created. It's borrowed into existence. All right, now this is an asset-based economic system. Now, to seed the system, if you're going to start a system up here, you've got to print some money out of the air. But instead of going to private banking institutions, it goes to the government. The government, the U.S. Treasury Department. Now here, there's two different ways it can go. Either that money is printed in order to pay the cost of government. Rather than, say, taxing, they just print the money to pay the cost of government. And then that money gets paid into the economy. And so you have an increase in liquidity in this system. The other system, you always have a decrease in liquidity because you always have to borrow more to pay the interest, but they don't print the interest. So you're always having to borrow more just to keep that system going, which is the system we're operating under. This, however, this is a completely different thing. This is a liquid manufacturing system. The other one is illiquidity manufacturing. So here it is. We have government prints the money out of the air. It's paid to the people in the form of checks to pay the cost of government. And it flows down this way because it's not removed. See, there's no air. It doesn't go back to the air here. It's not removed. The people have money to save and invest. It stays in the economy. They can save and invest that money. What's the biggest problem we have with trying to say retire these days? There's no money to save and invest. And if you do have money, if you're on a fixed income, you can't get any interest for it because they're stealing the interest from you. It's all part of the same model here. Now, part of this though gets paid into a banking system, a private banking system. Banks have to actually compete for your business. They actually have to use good, sound business practices in order to stay in business. They have to loan to people who can pay the money back because they're going to be borrowing money from the U.S. Treasury. They're also going to be building up their reserves. They're going to be building up their capitalization when they do that. But they're going to be borrowing from the U.S. Treasury, but when it gets paid back, rather than going to the paid back and going back into the air, that money goes back to the government treasury. And guess what? It helps to pay the cost of government. That's what this system does. It's no coincidence that in 1913, the first thing they did was they enacted the income tax. Excuse me. The first thing that they did, yes, they enacted the income tax, the 16th Amendment, to allow them to tax the people, because then the very next thing they did was they brought in the Federal Reserve. They knew that was going to happen, and they had to have a way to be able to pay the cost of government because they were about to take that means away. The government is supposed to be working in a perpetual asset-based monetary system, to where there's times where it just has to put on a little bit of gas. If you're running out of liquidity, then the government can put some more liquidity into the system. But you need more money to pay for a growing economy. Now, this has a feedback loop. So the other system started off in the air, went through the system, and then left back into the air. This one does not. The dollars, these are assets. These are not liabilities. They're entering into the system as real assets. That dollar doesn't have to be paid back. It just stays in the system and it grows with the economy. And that's what happens right here. So where you might have a taxing system, whether it's the fair tax or whether it's just excise taxes like they used to have before the Federal Reserve came in, they had a means to be able to get the people or the states to be able to contribute to the cost of the government. And that's what this does. It also allows the private banking system to then pay interest back to the government to pay the cost of government. So in here, in this system, you don't need you don't need an IRS. You don't need an income tax. This system is somewhat self-supporting. And that's why we didn't have that prior to 1913. So the money to pay the interest is already printed because the money never leaves. Then the money, unless the Treasury wanted to remove something, they could do it. But other than that, The money to pay interest on these loans here, it comes from savings and investment. You can save up to buy a car. Well, you can pay for part of the car, but you can't pay for all of the car. So you take some of your savings and you buy the car, and then you also borrow a little bit. But you're not borrowing. I heard today on Bloomberg, they said that the median purchase price of a new vehicle in this country is $30,000, and it's taking 68 months to pay it back at 0% interest. 68 months. They're spreading them out because the liquidity in this country is going down. They're having to do that in order to keep the business going. So this is your asset-based economic model. This is real money right here. This is an asset. This is fake money. This is counterfeit. This is a liability, but they want you to make... We trade liabilities in order to buy things. Think about it this way. If you had your neighbor, Bill, he's got a lawnmower. He owns the lawnmower. But you don't have a lawnmower. You say, Bill, can I borrow your lawnmower? Yeah, sure you can. Well, he's also got a weed whacker. Your neighbor says, hey, can I borrow your weed whacker? Yep, it's great. No problem. Just have it back by the end of the day. No problem at all. Halfway through the day, you're done with mowing the grass, but you need a weed whacker. So you go to your other neighbor and say, hey, look, you're done with that? I'll trade you this liability that I have for the liability that you have, and we'll both get our work done. That's what we have here. We're trading liabilities for assets. The asset is a nice yard. We're trading liabilities for asset, and it is so rotten, it is so crooked, and it is the way that our country is being destroyed. This is the back of it. Now, if you look on the Federal Reserve note, you're going to see all this Illuminati crap. This is the all-seeing eye, the pyramid and everything. So they're telling you what they're doing. They're telling you what they're doing. But, you know, we're going to be looking at it forever, and just really, we just keep doing it. Now, this just says it's $1. That's all it has to say. Yes, sir?
Can you go back one slide?
Sure.
What does it say about $1 on the U.S. note?
On
the U.S. note.
Oh, in the U.S. note?
Right above the $1 bottom, bottom center.
It says, we'll pay to the bearer on demand, $1.
It's not silver.
No, there are silver certificates, and there are gold certificates too, and those would be payable back in silver. But it just says it's going to pay $1. Well, there it is. It's all just printed out of the air. All right, now let's go with some of the things that Trump said here, and then I'm going to go extract some of the things that the two speakers said in the video. He said, if we are liquid enough as a country, we should buy back government bonds at a discount. Okay, I know when you hear that first time, you go, what's he talking about here? All right, I'm going to show you exactly what he's talking about. The liquidity of our country is going down and down and down and down because the system itself is bankrupt. I'm telling you something that it may be hard to swallow, but this system died in 2008. And they've been keeping it going by printing money. And I'm going to show you the figures here so that you'll be able to understand that. I'm just telling you the truth here. Just like Derek said, I don't lie to people. I'm just telling you the truth. All right. Look at this. I pulled this off this week from the Federal Reserve. You can go to the St. Louis Fed and you've got all kinds of interesting information if you just want to look it up. And this is the money velocity. Money velocity is a measure of how fast the money's changing hands in the economy. And so under a vibrant, growing economy, the money velocity is going to be increasing. If you have a growing economy, then people they're buying more and more things with the money that they have. But look at this. Since they've been keeping records in 1959, we're at the lowest point ever. We're at the lowest point of money velocity right now. Well, this goes hand in hand with all the other things I'm about to show you. Look here, student loans. Oh my gosh, don't get me going on the student loans, but folks, this lottery that we have, it's creating the conditions to where people have to borrow to pay for their higher education. When I went through Georgia Tech, it was like $750 a quarter. Okay, that was a lot, but it was manageable. Then I went through Georgia State. I borrowed $4,000 to get a master's degree. $4,000, and I paid it back in 10 years at $50.90 a month. It was a lot, but not $100,000 or $200,000. This is a debt monster. This Because all they're doing is they're going out and buying more facilities and creating more things to have to maintain at all these universities now. They're not colleges, they're not local colleges, they're all universities, and they all have to support all that, and that's bankrupting the people. Student loans, food stamps. Right now, if we didn't have electronic food stamp cards, then you'd have bread lines, you'd have soup lines. There's more people that are dependent upon the government for just basic food right now than at any time during the Depression. But we have these cards now, and every time they trip one of those cards, it creates money out of the air. And they have to keep it going. They have to keep more money going into the system in order to support the money, to pay the interest on the money that's already there. Can you say Cuba? Anyone has been concerned about Cuba, the real reason for that is that they're trying to create another market for currency so they can borrow more and more currency there, make it into a paradise, and have it paid back to the bankers. That's all that's about. Iran is not about nuclear weapons. It's all about currency. It's all about the control of the issuance of the currency and who has hegemony over the world markets with their currency. Federal debt keeps going up. Money printing. This is the only thing that's keeping the system going right here, is money printing. Either the Federal Reserve has been printing it outright, handing it to the Wall Street banks. The Wall Street banks for the longest time were just using it to bid up and entice people to buy into the markets. But one way or the other, this is the money. This is new money just being printed out of the air. And it's not even being borrowed by anybody. It's being set up as reserve because they're exchanging it for mortgage-backed assets. Well, they're not even assets. They're just derivatives. They're exchanging them for useless things, and we can't see their books because it's all part of the system. It's secret and it's criminal. Health insurance costs. We all know about that. Labor force participation. We've all been hearing that term, I think. Labor force participation rate is the lowest that it has been in I don't know how long, but it's lower, and notice it's going down. The workers' share of the economy, this is a big deal for the middle class. The middle class is being impoverished by this system. This is a system of trickle-up poverty. You've heard of trickle-down economics? Well, this is trickle-up poverty because it hurts the people at the lowest end the first, and they're the ones that have to take out and go on food stamps. They're the ones that become totally dependent on the government, and that level of people increases as time goes by. Home ownership, they keep coming up with these different ways to loan more money into the economy. So even for people that can't pay it back, they know they can't pay it back, but they got to get the money in the economy in the first place. If they don't, they can't pay back the interest on all the money that's out there in the first place. So they keep doing that, but as they do it, it's counterproductive. Home ownership keeps going down because the people can't pay it. So now they're to the point where people are not even borrowing anymore. Even at 0% interest, people are just not borrowing as they could. All right, this is the reason for diminished liquidity. The red area, that's dead. You know what a parabola is? A parabola is a trigonometric idea that keeps going up and up and up and up. This is the power of compound interest. You never pay the principal down, so the interest keeps building. And that's what this is, the power of compound interest. It can't go the other way. It cannot go the other way. That's why this system, as it is, under the Federal Reserve System, I've said this 100 times when I'm talking to people, that under the Federal Reserve System, it is mathematically impossible for America to become anything other than a nation completely encumbered in debt. That's it. And ultimately, that ends up in complete disaster. This number just keeps going down, and it starts to approach vertical. There's no other way for this model to go. Another reason for decreased liquidity is the value of the dollar itself. Over the last 100 years, it's devalued. It's now 5% of what it was in 1913. So they're devaluating the currency, so it takes more dollars to buy the same thing that it took, that you could buy 2 years ago. It takes more dollars, so that's a liquidity aspect of this. All right, now this is the national debt clock. Everybody ever looked at the national debt clock? You know what I'm talking about there? If you go into it, it'll just sit there and trickle off the numbers here. You can see what all these numbers. So I just took a screenshot of this. Now that number was moving very quickly very fast. It's all increasing. The number right there is moving very rapidly too. The increased difference between total debt and currency available to pay it off. All right, under the system that we're on right now, this number right here, that $65 trillion I referred to earlier, that is combined, say, $20 trillion for the United States government and $45 trillion for the American people. That adds up to $65 trillion. Now, in the money supply, there's only $12.7 trillion. I'm going to call that $13 trillion. So there's $13 trillion in the money supply. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. This is what you don't realize when you're looking at this. Every one of those $65 trillion was at one time introduced into circulation. Think about that. Now there's only 13 left. Where did it go? See, if you go to pay these back, it's going to take every one of these dollars to pay down that principal there. And by the time, every time you pay down that principal, then one of those dollars disappears. Remember, it goes from the air and then to the air. So if you pay that off, you'll be $52 trillion will be left owed by the time you've used all the money that's in circulation to pay off the debt. You still got $52 trillion to pay off. That's what this system does. It bankrupts not only this country, but the entire world. Now, on the other side of that, Trump says, this is the United States government, direct quote. You never default because you print the money. Notice he did not say, this is the Federal Reserve. He did not say this is a private banking system. This is not a debt-based system. This is the United States government. You never default because you print the money. Let's see what happens here if you start doing the math the other way. What we're going to do is unwind this. That's what this would do. It's going to unwind it. So every time you pay off, say, let's just talk about the national debt, say $20 trillion. Every time you print a dollar out of the air that is the people's money, and you pay that off, then one of those original dollars goes away. One for one. For every dollar of debt that you pay off, that dollar goes away, but you just put in a new dollar. So all of a sudden, you paid off principal, but you didn't lose any of your currency. So that number up here goes down, but that number stays the same. That's what Bill Still was saying. He's saying that you exchange the dollars one for one, and the money supply stays the same, so it's not inflationary. So that's the key here. Under the new asset-based system, the national debt will be paid off. It's just a matter of how quickly you actually take this project on. As the U.S. national debt is retired, the money supply is not affected. Less debt with the same currency available to pay it. That means more liquidity. Remember when Donald Trump said, if we're liquid as a country, then we can pay this down faster. Well, this is a liquidity machine. The other machine is an anti-liquidity machine. It's a starvation machine. It's a trickle-up poverty machine. This system injects liquidity in the system, and it pays off the debt while you keep enough money in there to operate.